Hey there, and thanks again for listening. It's Andre with another episode of the Impulsive Thinker podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by CADAC, the Center of ADHD Awareness Canada. You can find more information. You can donate at www.cadac.ca. Today, I have Santina Mosgal, who is a registered clinical counselor specializing in ADHD, and she works at the ADHD therapist. And she's going to talk to us today about emotions and ADHD from a counseling psychotherapist point of view. I guess it's fair enough to say. I don't know if I'm using the proper terms, but welcome, Santina. I appreciate you taking the time to discuss this topic.
Thank you, Andre, and thanks for having me here today. I'm a big fan of your podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. As some of you, the listeners, have been listening to some of my episodes, I talk a lot about emotional dysregulation. It's a big thing with ADHD, and primarily me, that's probably was one of my biggest disorder was the emotional dysregulation. But now that I'm able to manage it and I understand it, it comes a long way. But it's enough for me to regurgitate what I've read, or I thought it'd be good as we got an actual professional here to discuss emotions and ADHD and why it is what it is with the ADHD brain. Are you able to give us a little more insight on that, Santina?
Yeah, well, so usually when I'm talking to people about emotion regulation, which is one of your executive functions in the front part of your brain and the prefrontal cortex that is affected by ADHD. And a lot of people don't know that about ADHD, I find. Like
it's not part of the DSM. Yeah.
Right? No, it's not. Yeah, it's something that I think people are challenging right now and hoping that whenever that next DSM comes out, that it'll be included in that diagnosis. But at this time, no, it's not.
Because a lot of the experts are saying that ADHD emotions actually used to be in the DSM a long time ago, or the equivalent back in the decades ago, but they got removed out. Is it because it was hard to measure as a practitioner, or they just got rid of it because they felt like it?
Honestly, I am not aware of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. As far as I know, I mean, they have been, this is about the diagnosis itself, but it's been researched as far back as the 1800s or even prior to that, but officially. But I'm not exactly sure what is in those in the diagnosis manual for it at that in the earlier years, but it's not there. So lots of doctors and people have been, not really fully understanding how emotions play a part in ADHD. So I think it's awesome that we're here today talking about this. So
provide us a little more insight on that, the brain and the emotions. And to me, it's all about intensity. The way I understand is we intensely feel emotions.
Yeah. Like, so where am I going to start here? Without getting overcomplicated. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull out one of my slides because it always helps me to have my prompts in front of me.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, it's a good tool that helps. So what I usually start with when I'm talking about emotion regulation with people is how the brain is it's developing with this asynchronous development, which means that the front part of your brain, the part where your executive functions are, it's actually it's developing at a slower rate than the rest of your brain, and lots of people don't know that about ADHD. But in retrospect, it makes a lot of sense if I was to ask you what you were like when you were 6 years old or 8 years old with your emotions compared to maybe a neurotypical and their ability to regulate feel, and the intensity at which they would feel their emotions.
The intensity was completely different. Actually, it still is, even in my adulthood. Always been accused of being too sensitive or overreact. Overreact was a big one for me. And I think a lot of more ADHD people I talk to are always called being too sensitive or very overreactive and emotive.
Yes, exactly. And so, even in scans of the brain, they're seeing that the amygdala, which is that little lizard part of your brain, and all it knows is to keep you safe, by fight, flight, or freezing. They see that it's lighting up a lot more in individuals who have ADHD.
So that's our, like the primitive brain as they reference it, like it's like our survival part of our brain.
It is, yeah. And so that is, that in itself is demonstrating that we people who are neurodiverse are feeling their emotions with a lot more intensity than their counterparts. So how this comes to play with the asynchronous development is that, and when I'm talking about this asynchronous development, I think it's more like for people who don't have developmental delays of any sort with ADHD. Okay, so that is a different topic. So, but if we're looking at an individual with ADHD, it's not always obvious until you start school that to you or to your parents, like they may have had, or your caregivers, they may have had some suspicions that you were really intense.
Yeah.
But they often don't have something to compare it to, and or the knowledge of what this is, right?
Right.
So once you start in the education system, that's when it starts to become obvious, because you're like 5 or 6 years old and you really want to tear the eyes out of the person who just knocked over your blocks.
Yes.
But the other kids in the classroom aren't reacting that way. And so you're learning at that age that something's different about you. Right?
Yeah.
So, and then as you are getting you're running maybe through the education system, and the teachers are getting to know you, they're seeing that there's this part of you that is really like a great student, like you have this capability of functioning sometimes and getting it done sometimes. And then when it's not working, or it's not right, or you're pissed off, something upsets you, your emotion is like so big and debilitating that it takes a teacher forever to get you back into engaging back in the classroom, or it's very disruptive to the other people. Right. And that's where the people who have ADHD may be told, well, what's wrong with you? Like, why? You're so smart, you're so great, why can't you control your emotions? Like,
yeah, that sounds familiar.
Right?
So what's not controlling our emotion then? So the amygdala, what I'm understanding is the amygdala kind of, that's the emotion, the reaction that starts at the amygdala in survival, flight, but either you fight, freeze, or what's the other one? Freeze, flight, or fight. But so we got that emotion coming out. Is there another part of the brain that's supposed to kind of filter? Like I've always been accused of having no filter.
Yeah. Well, so that is that's one of your executive functions, right? Your no filter is your I don't have my list of
the inhibition ability.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah. So
is
it's
that the prefrontal cortex?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are your executive functions, and some people have a list of 7, some people have a list of 14.
Yeah.
You know, but knowing what those are really is going to tell you at the end of the day what your ADHD is. Because and some of them are stronger than the others. They're like muscles
Yeah. Yeah.
in the front part of your brain, right? And one of those muscles is to control the the amygdala, the little lizard in your brain that's feeling your emotions at a great intensity. But because that front part of your brain where your executive functions are, your emotion control muscle, that is delayed by 3 to 5 years. So
in comparison to a neurotypical than the
in
general public. Okay.
Right. So not only are you having the ability to feel bigger, you have less of a muscle to control it. And so imagine now, like if you were to look back at that 6-year-old in, you know, in grade 1 who's wanting to really physically hurt somebody or themselves or throw, you know, just outburst that anger, they're getting reprimanded for a reaction that if a 3-year-old were to do it,
right,
society would be more accepting of that.
Right. So a 6-year-old actually has an emotional inhibition ability of a 3-year-old is what I'm hearing.
So it's not an exact science, but it's a delayed of up to 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Now the number I'm reading is the 3 is an average. Yeah. That
so
seems to be the norm. Yeah.
Yeah, you've heard this then a little. Yeah.
Well, I see that in my 2 girls, well, especially my oldest, who's a lot more hyperactive, impulsive, and big emotions. And I can see how when we had friends over and the kid was about 4 years younger than her, and you can kind of see the emotional, I don't know if the right term was maturity, was about the same. You can kind of see the similarities. And then what I've read too is even, you know, as you get older, that gap might get a little smaller, but typically you might not catch up. So technically I'm still a 45-year-old emotion wise compared to my.
So get this, Andre, like, you know, this is what I spent a full 2 hours. Like I have actually I do 4 hours when I'm running groups on emotion regulation. I have 2 2-hour sessions, and it's mostly psychoeducation for the most part, where I'm teaching adults who are, you know, okay, that I don't have to give the age range. For the first time, they're understanding of what are the 5 core emotions, and what is their purpose? What do they feel like? How do you learn to label them? And what is their action urge, which is what are they meant to do?
Yeah, go more on that. Emotion, urge, action. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go more on that in just 1 second, because what I want to tell you, which is incredible to see, is that today, so like, you know, I think psychologists just somehow, you know, got together and realized the importance of teaching emotion regulation to children as a baseline for mental health understanding or mental health I don't know, basics. And because, you know, emotion regulation is present in every mental health diagnosis. You know, and so now it's, I don't know about your daughters, but for my daughter, she started learning about emotion regulation in kindergarten.
Yeah, they started early because of what I've learned about myself too. Yes.
Yeah. So you've been learning from the stuff that your kids were learning.
Yeah, and then also try and do the opposite of what my parents did about emotions. So yeah, we always talked about emotions. It's okay to feel it, validate them.
Yeah.
But it always comes down to your reaction, is what you do with it, right? Like your amygdala is going to react no matter what, right? Your prefrontal cortex, that's the filter. Ours might be a little more asynchronous development back, but it's all what you do with the emotion is the fallout,
Yeah.
in my experience.
Well, so I think it's deeper than that because I am a therapist.
Mhm.
So I think it's deeper than that. So I think I think that so you've heard this term before where we're all doing the best that we can with the tools that we have, right? That's
Correct.
what
Yep.
DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, Martha Lenihan's,
Mhm.
famous quote. And I really like that because I really I believe in that we adapt, we're adaptable beings, right? So when a child is 6 years old and they are, maybe after a few times of this happening at school, they're starting to be like, they start to feel shame. Like,
Oh,
I'm,
huge,
there's something
huge.
different about me here.
Not only a child, but an adult too. And,
100,
and then
even
and the entrepreneurs are always accused of being too emotional and hyper, right? So a lot of us do feel shame when we do an outburst with staff, clients, or even at home. So yeah, the shame is
huge.
everything. Yeah, massive.
It
And we're
is
hard on ourselves. We feel the shame, then we keep kicking ourselves even more on top. More shame, more kicking, more shame, more kicking. Right.
exactly. And yet, so well, I'm losing. So, and I was gonna say, and yet, that makes me want to lead into what is shame, but I wasn't fully there yet. It was the kids.
Emotion, urge, action. Yeah.
Yeah, the kids are when they're feeling it. So they're, this is the, anyways, I can let it go, but I felt like I was trying to finish something there. It'll come back to me. Um, uh, oh yeah, because I was saying that it is deep rooted that as an adult you're going to be feeling it as well, but it's your coping mechanisms started when you started seeing that you were different from other
Right.
people,
Yep.
right? And so at that point you are learning to either squash it, don't show it, it freaks people out,
Mm-hmm.
or depending on how people react, if they're like, oh, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, you're learning this message of it's okay to feel crazy inside of me, rage inside of me,
Mm-hmm.
like this feeling is normal. So it's just sort of an invalidating experience
Well,
of
it's definitely invalidating, but it's also saying the emotions you're feeling is not okay because everything's okay and you're just overreacting, right?
exactly right. And you're not getting the tools to understand what those emotions are,
Mhm.
and that you actually need them. They're all there for a reason. So this leads me to talking about the the action urges. So I love this. This is something that the um, physicians of Victoria
Mhm.
came up with, as far as I'm aware. And so I borrow it from them when it comes to teaching emotion regulations. But they're showing that there are six
So what are
core emotions.
the six emotions? They're what?
The six core emotions, and from depending on who the teacher is, somebody might say that anger isn't a core emotion
Well,
because
which ones do you have? What are
it is.
you got
Yeah,
six
okay.
listed?
So I have joy, sadness, anger, fear, shame, and guilt.
Yeah.
And a lot of times today like you were mentioning, like the shame is so big. And if you were to go on to talk to anybody with ADHD, like that's the core piece you want to be working on with them as a
Mhm.
therapist, from my perspective, because it's so deep and encompassing. Just like
Mhm.
if I was working with somebody who is suffering from depression, I'm really going to focus in with them on sadness and guilt, Or if it's with somebody with anxiety, I'm going to focus in on that emotion of fear, right? Like we're really talking about.
Okay. So so how does that fall in with your emotion, urge, and action?
Yeah. Okay. So this is the fun part here. We're getting right into what everybody should know about their emotions. So the trigger for happiness is a satisfying event, getting something you wanted. And then the thoughts that come with that is, this is the best thing ever. The sensations. So if I was to ask you, how does joy feel in your body?
Okay, so that means the trigger initiates an emotion. Okay, in this case, we're talking about joy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah. And so how would you feel joy if you felt it in your body?
Oh, you feel elated, high energy.
Yeah.
Burst of dopamine.
Yeah.
So that'd be the sensation then, right?
Yeah. So it's hard because we're not used to using this language, right?
No.
But so the feeling of joy in your body, sometimes you said this elated energy. So like a vibration and smiles and lots of energy, right? And the urge of that emotion is to share it with somebody, right? Like you got something awesome that comes in, you can't sit at your desk anymore, you're running around the office and you want to share it with everyone, right? And its purpose is to help you stay connected to your community. Okay. So what we see is, if we were to do this with each of those emotions, what you're going to see is that ultimately they all have like a survival, like from an evolutionary standpoint, they all have like a survival purpose.
Yep.
And the more you're able to recognize those sensations in your body and say, oh, that's this feeling, that's what this emotion is.
Okay, right.
The more you're going to be able to do the act out on the urge of it. But when you are emotionally dysregulated, which means you're struggling to,
it's taking over you and it's owning you.
It's owning you, and you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're squashing it, right? Or you're avoiding it.
Well, like one example I have is I remember when I was in a really, when ADHD took over and my emotional dysregulation took over. I remember one instance when I was just screaming at my kids and I was going all out, and I consciously goes, you've got to stop. You've got to stop. I was telling myself, you've got to stop. And then the other part of my brain saying, no, I'm going to keep going. And I couldn't stop it because it was just so far over the edge.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's almost as if I need an external person to just shake me out of it.
Yes.
And I've seen that with my kids too. Once they get over that edge, it's just hard. You can't talk them out. It's very difficult.
It is. And once you come down, that's when that shame just hits you.
Oh yeah. No, it doesn't hit you. It steamrolls you. It's disheartening for everyone involved. Even the person. Yeah.
Because what's happening is when you are like reacting, you're acting in a way that's not consistent with the behaviors that you value.
Okay, I like that. The behaviors that you value. So it's not a moral failing. It's your brain kind of taking over, and it's not representative of you as a person.
You as a person, right?
Yeah, and everyone's got to understand this. Understand this. It's not who you are. It's not a value. It's not, it's demoralizing, but this is how the brain works, and it's not about you. It's not. You don't have a moral failing. We just need to, like you mentioned, Santine, we just got to strengthen our inhibitive muscles, or that muscles to filter and to, I don't know, my experience is, I don't know if this will make sense to you, but I got a better idea of the triggers for my emotions. So I got a lot of early warning systems that I'm more aware of to know that if I let this go too far, it will escalate to the point where my action will become a reaction. And reaction to me is on the negative side. Well, if you take positive action, we've got two different paths here.
Yeah, you have two different paths, right? So you have that the react
Mhm.
one where you're not really applying you're utilizing the tools that you have been using that have been unsuccessful.
Right. So we got a few minutes here. Now, as an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
we're highly stressed. There's always some stressor, there's always something going on. Does
Mhm.
stress have an effect on emotional regulation or emotional dysregulation?
100%. 100%. Um, but how much time do we have?
Well, just give me a little quick summary. Like, if you're highly stressed, are you more likely to be more on the emotional dysregulation side of the spectrum than on the
Yeah.
regulation?
So when you're stressed, you're dealing with let's say the activation part. Your body's in activation mode. When you're stressed, your body thinks you're running from a
A
saber tooth.
predator.
Yeah, a
Okay.
saber-tooth tiger.
Yep.
And so it's doing all the things it needs to do to keep you safe. And sometimes that's just to stand still as well, right?
Freeze. Yeah.
To freeze. Um, but if you are I just got distracted because I heard a noise upstairs. Jeez.
So
So
it just sounds like your body is more attuned and heightened
okay.
to react.
So and then what you need to do from an evolutionary standpoint to get that to calm down is you need to shake it off like a deer in the field, right?
Right.
Who all of a sudden all their hairs bounce up and their ears bounce up and their tail goes up because they think they heard something, and then they shake their body and they go back to grazing the grass, and so that's the shake is the calming part of your system,
Right.
and
Okay.
the two cannot operate at the same time.
Right. Okay.
And so if you are in full-blown stress mode
Yeah.
because you lost your keys
Mhm.
or you're running late for the bus
Or a client appointment. Yep. Been there.
or a client appointment,
Yep.
your body thinks it's being chased by a saber-tooth tiger. And if you have not been treated with your ADHD until later on in life, you have been experiencing that reaction a whole lot more than the average individual who does
Yeah.
not have ADHD.
Well, I think I still feel it, but I'm just more aware and be able to take precautionary action.
Of course, you still feel it. Everybody needs to feel.
Yeah.
Like everybody
Yeah.
needs to feel that, right? But I think that's again another topic. I would like to
Mhm.
save that for another day. And so once you're already in that flight freeze zone, which your body's more likely to go there quicker because you're used to this now at your age if you didn't have ADHD
Become
diagnosed
habitual.
prior.
And then the
right?
higher stress you are, the more reactive, the quicker you're going to get to that emotion than if you were
Yeah.
relaxed.
Exactly. And once you're in that state, it is really hard to bring you back down.
Yeah.
There are a couple tricks where you lose your keys or you're running late for an appointment and your body thinks you're being chased by a saber-tooth tiger. Well, you can convince your body that you are drowning in a ice cold river by tapping into a reflex in your body, and that will activate your soothing part of your body and calm it all right down. So when your body's in stress, all the blood from your stomach is going to your big muscles to run and fight from the tiger, right?
Right. So even taking 5 deep breaths is a calming mechanism, or mindful meditation would be another one.
Exactly. Do you want to understand why, or?
No, I know there's lots of stuff here we can branch off of, but we're running out of time here. So what I just want to do quickly here is summarize is what I heard is that I never realized myself that even my own brain has asynchronous growth development inside my own brain. I didn't realize that part. I knew that we were asynchronous growth compared to the everyone else for that emotional maturity side.
Yeah.
But in a way, our amygdala reacts quickly, fight, flight, or freeze reaction, and we feel that intensely. Our prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, or our filters or our muscle, as you say, is not strong enough yet. They can be built to help inhibit or control those reactions, right? And there's a lot of comment. I really like that analogy about the deer. How the deer, it's true. You know, they hear something, they're off, they run, and then I never realized that shake was their calm down. And you're right, they can just go right and eat. And that, to me, we need to figure out those kind of triggers. To me, it was important to identify the triggers to get to the emotion, to the reaction.
Yeah.
But it's that calming down, so take the 5 breaths or just walk away. A lot of times, all you got to do is walk away.
Yeah, which is not, it's easier said than done. And there's a whole other, like I said, 4 hours worth of information that I can share to you.
I think he did a 2-hour training session very succinctly in today. It was good. I think we gained a lot of insight, and it's a brain thing, not a you thing.
Yeah.
Right? Is that fair?
It is totally fair.
Well, thank you for your expertise here, Santina. I appreciate it. Did you want to talk a little more about the ADHD therapist to the listeners?
Well, the ADHD therapist, you can find me at www.theadhdtherapist.ca. I am out of BC. I'm located in Vancouver, BC.
British Columbia for the non-Canadians listening.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so I'm a registered clinician and I work one-on-one or run groups for people or adults with ADHD. I don't work with youth or families or children. So specifically adults with ADHD, which is my area of expertise.
Well, that's really good because there's not a lot of people out there that understand adult ADHD. There's a plethora of them for kids because it's been a kid problem until the last decade or so. So I'm really glad to hear that you're specialized in adults because we need people there that get it. So thank you very much for your time. And to the listeners, I'd like to hear from you. Send me an email at questions@theimpulsivethinker.com and let me know what you think, or if this resonates with you. This emotional, intense emotional feeling and immediate impulsive reactions. And I just want to stress here, it's a brain thing. It's not a you thing. This is not who you are. It's just the way you're wired. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.